We've explored the upcoming Battle of Ice, but what about the Battle of Steel? Will King Aegon and the Golden Company seize Storm's End? And what does any of this have to do with the real-life Battle of Agincourt? Let's start by breaking down the upcoming fight. King Aegon VI Targaryen has returned to Westeros with the support of Lord Jon Connington and the Golden Company. He's backed by the wealthy Illyrio Mopatis and the shadowy Varys, for reasons yet unknown. He could be a legitimate Targaryen, he could be a random pisswater prince, he could even be a Blackfire. You can learn all about this in my 6th Blackfire Rebellion video. All that matters here, however, is that Aegon turned west to claim the Iron Throne instead of travelling east to Meereen to marry Daenerys and secure her dragons. The 10,000 men of the Golden Company sailed from Volontheris with weapons, horses and elephants, boasting nondescript banners to maintain the element of surprise. They aimed for Cape Wrath in the Stormlands, fearing that an invasion from Dawn would turn Westeros against them. Alas, their fleet was scattered by a storm, but not by the enemy. The Red Wine fleet was busy dealing with the Ironborn in the west, and the Lord Admiral Aurane Waters had stolen the royal fleet to establish a pirate kingdom in the Stepstones. Probably. Those who landed in Cape Wrath organised swiftly, seizing several Stormlander castles, including Griffin's Roost, the long-lost seat of the exiled Jon Connington, thanks to the Golden Company's experience, skill and surprise attacks. Only now does the Crown realise they've been invaded by sellswords. The largest jewel in the Stormy Crown is Storm's End itself. Seizing the ancestral seat of House Baratheon would be a major propaganda victory for Aegon and his men. Let's run through the key players on Team Targaryen. Aegon VI himself, handsome, brave, impulsive, a classic young monarch. He waits at camp while Jon Connington reclaims Griffin's Roost, but demands to lead the attack on Storm's End to prove himself a worthy king. His hand is Lord Jon Connington. After losing the Battle of the Bells to the rebellious Robert Baratheon, Jon was stripped of his lands and exiled by the Mad King. To reclaim his castle and dignity, and to avenge the love of his life Rhaegar Targaryen, Jon Con is determined to place Aegon on the Iron Throne. After some of the Golden Company landed on Cape Wrath, Lord Connington took 1/4 of the men to reclaim his old seat. They emerged from the forest and rammed through the castle gatehouse, shooting any ravens that flew overhead from the rookery. The hardened sellswords scaled the walls of the castle with grapnels, unperturbed by the unprepared garrison's cauldrons of cold oil, and Lord Jon himself insists that Storm's End must be taken next, as soon as possible. After all, with grayscale creeping up his arm, he is racing against time itself. The first, and currently only member of Aegon's Kingsguard is Sir Rolly Duckfield, a skilled warrior and former member of the Golden Company. We have a lot more players within the company itself. Its Captain General is the gregarious badass known as Sir Miles Toyne, the Blackheart. Oh wait, no, he died before the book started. The current leader is the unimpressive Harry Strickland, the former paymaster. He's far more cautious than Jon and Aegon, insisting that the Golden Company wait for its scattered men to arrive and unite, before attacking Storm's End. The current paymaster is Gorissa Dorian, who sets up camp at Cape Wrath with 1/4 of the men to await stragglers. The company spymaster is Lysono Mar, while Sir Laswell Peake, a company sergeant, takes another 1/4 of the men to seize the reign house of House Wild. The final 1/4 is led by Sir Tristan Rivers to take Crow's Nest of House Morrigan. Meanwhile, Sir Mark Mandrake lands on the island of Vestermont and improvises, leading 500 men to snatch Greenstone of House Estamont. Mistwood, Tarth and half the Stepstones end up being seized by the Golden Company. Long story short, they're very effective. There's also Sir Franklin Flowers, a company captain known as the Bastard of Cider Hall who leads the attack on the Griffin's Roost Gatehouse, and Black Balak, the commander of the company archers. These are the skilled, diverse fighters of the Golden Company. But what of the crown? The child king Tommen Baratheon rules over a war-torn land and sits upon the crumbling Iron Throne, the power of which has diminished since Cersei's disastrous tenure as Queen Regent saw the rise of the High Sparrow and the loss of the royal fleet and... you know what, just watch Quinn's video. The latest regent, Kevin Lannister, has been assassinated by a merman, leaving a potentially deadly power vacuum in King's Landing. Tommen's new hand is the blustering Mace Tyrell, the Oath of Highgarden, Lord Pufffish himself. He refuses to leave the capital and deal with the Golden Company until his daughter Marjorie has been proven innocent by the faith. The Master of Laws is the Marshal Lord Randall Tarly, a skilled commander who won the Battle of Ashford against Robert Baratheon, and the Battle of the Blackwater against Stannis Baratheon, even though Mace Tyrell takes credit for both. The new Master of Ships is Lord Paxter Redwine, but as I've mentioned before, he's tied up in the west. Finally, we have the Reacherman Lord Mathis Rowan, who's currently besieging Storm's End. Oh, I almost forgot to mention, Storm's End is currently being held by Sir Gilbert Farring and a garrison of Stannis loyalists. So, to summarise, the Golden Company have seized most of the Stormlands, but their forces remain scattered. Jon Connington and Aegon wish to seize Storm's End from Stannis loyalists. The castle is already being besieged by Lord Mathis Rowan, while Mace Tyrell left the siege to return to King's Landing, where the political situation is a powder keg. Before we can progress into the Battle of Steel itself, there's an important Winds of Winter sample chapter to discuss, Arianne 2. On the way to meet Aegon and Jon Connington, Arianne Martell is informed that the Golden Company has already seized Storm's End, and that Mace Tyrell's army is approaching. How did any of this even happen? There are two options. One is that the Golden Company charged against Lord Rowan's token siege force, wiped them out, and then stormed Storm's End. But Jon Connington has already stated that he wishes to take the castle by guile, not by force. They will not march, but sail to Storm's End, pretending to have been hired by Stannis Baratheon, bearing gifts of food and steel for the garrison. Sir Gilbert Farring will give the sellswords passage into the stronghold's cavern, and once they've all filed in, the massacre will begin. Lord Rowan will find himself besieging a Targaryen instead of a Baratheon, which I'm sure will be very, very confusing. What's next? Will Aegon leave behind his own token force, or will they parley with the Reach Lord? Mathis Rowan is competent and respected. We don't know much about his character, but his loyalties may be in doubt. He fought for the Targaryens during Robert's Rebellion, he seems disgusted by Tywin shifting blame for the murder of Elia Martell and her children, and the crown is generally collapsing under the chaos of the Tyrell-Lannister alliance. And perhaps most importantly, House Rowan is a direct descendant of Garth Greenhand, and has a better claim to Highgarden than the Tyrells. All of this is to say that Lord Mathis may bend the knee and join Aegon's cause, in return for being named Lord of Highgarden. He may already be a Targaryen loyalist for all we know. What we know for certain is that Aegon has alleged friends in the Reach. He could be one of them. Either way, Aegon holds Storm's End. But, as we learned, Mace Tyrell is approaching with his army, which means Margaery may have been found innocent. That's nice. Anyway, the Battle of Steel will likely be the upcoming fight between the Golden Company led by Aegon and the Tyrell army. George R.R. Martin often says he pilfers and plunders from real history. The War of the Five Kings is like the War of the Roses, the Red Wedding is like the Black Dinner, so perhaps the Battle of Steel will be like the Battle of Agincourt. That's right, it's time for some History Haven. In 1415 AD, the force of the English king Henry V fought the forces of French nobility on the field. On the English side, Henry boasted a cohesive army of around 1,500 men-at-arms and 7,000 longbowmen. On the French side, there was no unified command, simply a variety of noblemen commanding specific levies, totaling around 10,000 men-at-arms and around 4,000 footmen, including archers. The English were blockaded by the French in between the woods of Agincourt and Tramecourt, and they were outnumbered. The French nobles demanded to be placed in the vanguard ahead of the archers and crossbowmen, embodying the brave, chivalrous virtues of knighthood. After a tense standoff, the French charged first. The rains the night before had turned the field into a muddy slop, trapping the horses and knights as they struggled towards the enemy. Meanwhile, positioned in the woods on either side of the field behind sharpened stakes, the English longbowmen let loose their arrows. Horses were slain, knights went flying, and men-at-arms were trampled into the mud. It was a massacre. When the English archers ran out of arrows, they swarmed the stuck Frenchmen with whatever they could get their hands on. Axes, knives, hammers. The French main force began to flee, trampling over everything and everyone in their way. Fearing another attack from the French rearguard, Henry V ordered his captives, whose numbers overwhelmed the English fighters, to be massacred, until he realised the enemy had properly fled. In the words of George R.R. Martin, the English loosed hundreds of arrows at the flower of French chivalry. The Reach is somewhat like medieval France. It's sunny, powerful, knightly, and chivalrous, supposedly even the birthplace of chivalry in Westeros. Perhaps the arrogant Mace Tyrell and his army of cocky summer knights will forego strategy for bravery, placing themselves in the van. They will be met in the field by the smaller force of the Golden Company, led by a brave young king. They are well trained, cohesive, and boast many archers. Black Balak's men are seasoned veterans who wield crossbows, long eastern bows, and big yew longbows. Even the more traditional Jon Connington admits that the arrow is just as deadly as the sword. The Tyrells will not be at full strength. Sir Garland the Gallant has marched half of the host back to the Reach to seize Brightwater Keep from the treasonous Florence. Nonetheless, Mace's host will likely outnumber the sellswords. So we have the heavy-plated cavalry of chivalrous knights, we have the skilled archers, and one side outnumbers the other. For the historical analogy to be complete, we just need a muddy field, and according to the aforementioned Arianne sample chapter, the rains have turned the roots to mud. The Tyrells will be annihilated as the foreign sellswords shoot hundreds of arrows at the flower of Westerosi chivalry. Oh, and there may also be elephants, because why not? Mace Tyrell himself may be slain, but if not, he'll certainly be captured as a hostage. Whether Aegon will replicate Henry V's order to massacre prisoners is unknown, although if it does happen, it's more likely to be commanded by Jon Connington, whose honour at the Battle of the Bells lost him everything. The Griffin Lord may wish to channel Tywin instead, and butcher those who refuse to bend the knee. There's one major wildcard, Lord Randall Tarly, an actual competent commander. He may be one of Aegon's friends in the Reach. After all, his liege lord has disrespected him by taking the credit for his military successes. And after the Battle of the Blackwater, Mace granted Brightwater and Florent lands to his son Garlan, even though Randall Tarly is married to Melissa Florent and has a better claim. Treason may explain his attitude during Kevan's last small council meeting, in which he keeps downplaying the threat of Aegon and the Golden Company. He may either stay behind in King's Landing to help the Golden Company seize it later, or he will join the Battle of Steel itself to betray the Tyrells. Although, I do have to admit, too many Winds of Winter theories revolve around one army backstabbing another army from behind. So what is the aftermath of the Battle of Steel? With the defeat of the Tyrell host, the capturing of the Stormlands, and the seizing of Storm's End itself, Aegon deals a huge blow to both the Iron Throne and Stannis Baratheon. If Aegon and Arianne Martell marry, then Prince Doran will likely side with the young king and join the invasion from the south. Who knows, maybe the High Sparrow and the Faith Militant will even side with Aegon in exchange for Maegor's laws being revoked, potentially. Regardless, Aegon and the Golden Company may eventually seize King's Landing from the Mad Queen Cersei Lannister and liberate the south of Westeros. A handsome young king, a beautiful queen, and a hardened hand. Or, if we continue our direct comparison to Henry V, Aegon will shit himself to death shortly after winning the Iron Throne. It's genius! Shout out to the theorist Bryndon Beefish, whose work inspired this video. Let me know what you think in the comments. Is this how the battle's gonna go down? And which other theories should I animate? This video was sponsored by my amazing patrons at patreon.com/fantasyhaven. We've got exclusive videos, a Discord, and other goodies. You can also support the channel by liking, subscribing, and checking out the merch. All of the descriptions are in the link below. Wait, hold on. To learn more about Aegon VI, click on the video on the left. And to learn more about the upcoming Battle of Ice, check out the video on the right. Special thanks to Andre, Caden, Colshot, Devcole, Itchaboi, and Morphy.